And tell me, what are you hoping to get out of this presentation? That'll just help me to make sure that I meet your needs.
Did I just do to myself?
We may have some shy people, and that's quite all right, because we really
That's
just
okay.
want to share. But this is Bridget, and I am just, I just love to learn, period, about our brains, emotions, behaviors. And so definitely here to see if we can help as many people as we can, whether they want to talk about it or not with others, that's okay. But just, I think many just want to learn. We all know someone in our families, our friends, or someone, we're trying to do a different emotion or a different mental health emotion, I guess, every month. And so I just feel like we know someone who kind of fits each category, if not ourselves. So just interesting to learn and how we can help others too.
Absolutely, Bridget. And it probably depends on the day, whether that's someone else or ourselves, especially when it comes to anger. Somebody else put in the chat, anger management, understanding why anger affects emotions and behavior. So I certainly think we will talk about that. And I will let you all be as interactive or not interactive as you want to be this afternoon. So I'm going to put some questions, some options out there, and participate as you are comfortable. So hopefully you are seeing my PowerPoint. Is everybody seeing my PowerPoint?
I do. She used to do Camp Aaron.
Shauna, I remember you from Camp Aaron. So that's wonderful. I know it's fun to see names. So we have a poll up. So I would like for you all to answer this poll question. So just yes or no. Are all emotions innocent? So I'm seeing lots of no's, some yeses. So they certainly don't all. I'm going to end the polling so we can all see. So results, and you can see it on my shared screen here, I think. 70% no, 30% yes. So thank you all for doing the poll with me. So, so I will tell you my bias and hope that that you may come to kind of see things a little bit differently. I believe that all emotions are innocent. They don't always feel that way. So sometimes there are emotions that can feel much more challenging than others, but they're just part of being human. We experience a range of emotions. And if you don't agree with me at the end of our time together, that's okay. So a little bit about our learning objectives for today. What I hope to cover is the definitions of anger, the body's response to anger, strategies to cope with anger in the moment when you're feeling that anger, and also on an ongoing basis, because there are things that we can do to kind of help those moment by moment situations. And then also, as Bridget really talked about, we may want to respond to anger that others are displaying. And how do we do that? So both for ourselves, but also for those that we interact with. So we'll start with some definitions. So Merriam-Webster defines anger as a noun, a strong feeling of displeasure and usually antagonism. As a verb, to fill someone with anger or provoke anger in. I had to kind of chuckle at this one because I think it's funny when there's a definition and the word that they're defining is actually in the definition. But that is Merriam-Webster, and I feel like Webster is a good sound source. I also pulled up a definition from the APA. So the American Psychological Association says anger is an emotion characterized by antagonism towards someone or something that you feel has done you wrong. But it goes on to say anger can be a good thing. It can give you a way to express negative feelings, for example, or motivate you to find solutions to your problems. So let's dig a little bit deeper. Who knows who Brene Brown is? Yeah, Katie raised her hand. Katie knows Brene Brown. She's a social worker, so maybe I feel some kinship that way, but she's a researcher. So where I went the therapy track, she went the research track, and she's brilliant. She's written some fantastic books, and she just has some great quotes. And she says, when we are in pain and fear, anger and hate are our go-to emotions. And as I said in the beginning and in the title slide, I did name this anger and other challenging emotions because sometimes there are other things that go along with anger. So fight or flight. I assume people have heard of fight or flight. We talk about it in education quite a lot, trainings that I've done. So fight or flight, anybody want to unmute themselves? I'm just going to keep giving you opportunities. You don't have to take them, but anybody want to unmute themselves and tell me what you know about fight or flight?
It's when you're in a situation where you're either going to run from your emotions or you're going to fight, fight at something, someone, yourself, because you don't know kind of which one you want to do.
Yeah. And it's a biological response. Fight or flight comes all the way back from when we were cave people being chased by bears. So that's how basic this response we have is. It's part of our autonomic nervous system, just as the automatic nervous system. That's how I remember it. And anger is the emotion connected to the fight half of fight or flight. So when we think about the autonomic nervous system, and I'm just going to touch on this, I find this stuff fabulous and fantastic and really intriguing and feel like I know this much of something that is hugely big. But when we think about the autonomic nervous system, there are two main components, which is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And I like to think about it as the gas pedal, which is the sympathetic, makes things go, and the brake pedal, which is the parasympathetic, which slows things down. And the nervous system needs both, just like a car needs both to be able to drive and get somewhere. You have to be able to use the gas pedal and the brake pedal. If one or the other is offline, it causes accidents, right? That does not work. I guess if your gas pedal is offline, you just don't go anywhere. It may or may not cause accidents, but it doesn't work. And our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system work the same way. They work in concert. But what happens when we go into that fight or flight place is that we get stuck in the gas, the sympathetic part of our nervous system, and we just respond. When this happens, our stress hormones surge, and it takes the part of our brain that helps us to have good judgment, the front part of our brain, it takes it offline. And so we just respond. And so that's what happens when anger comes out as a behavior, is it's that fight part of our autonomic nervous system. What also happens when you have prolonged times of stress, and I think this is really different than maybe when I would have talked about anger over a year ago, because I probably wouldn't be talking to a group that I can pretty much assume has experienced prolonged chronic stress in the past year, because I have not met anyone who hasn't expressed that stress that we've all been feeling. So chronic stress, the way that impacts our autonomic nervous system is that it causes those stress hormones to surge, right? And they're supposed to. When we have stress, our hormones surge, and that helps us to run from bears. It helps us to respond in stressful situations. But the goal is then for those stress hormones to come back down to the baseline. When we experience chronic stress, though, the stress hormones surge. This is always hard to do. This is so much easier to do in person when I explain this because I can move my arms up higher, but the stress hormones surge. And then instead of coming all the way back down to baseline, they surge again before they can come back to baseline. And then they surge again. And pretty soon we are hanging out with our stress hormones up here, which leads us to having those fast responses, to feeling anger in a very different way, to expressing feelings of anger in a different way. And it leads others to the same. Does that make sense? I get some head nods. You can
Yes.
put it in the chat. Yes. Okay, good. So I think the topic of anger is probably even more important now after the amount of chronic stress that we've been experiencing in the past year than maybe it ever was. So I want you to think about how anger presents for you when you're in that fight part of fight or flight, or what do you see in others? So you can throw it in the chat. You can unmute yourself. I will say I think Deborah was going to say something.
I don't know if I can talk. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I think with me, I tend to be the person to flight. And my response on that is because I need that time. But sometimes when you're in the middle of an argument, the person doesn't understand. They look at the flight as being negative, but I look at it as a way for me to get a hold of my emotion before saying or doing something that I wouldn't want to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and actually fits really well with what we're going to talk about in how to respond in the moment when you're feeling those feelings. So I would support you in that, giving yourself a break and stepping away.
But the person never understands that.
So I'm going to talk about, because what may happen, and I'm guessing here, is that then the other person's emotions surge, and then how do we respond to that, right? And then there's that push and that pull of emotions. So I'm going to give you maybe some tips that might help with that. Hopefully. So it is really super challenging. Anger's hard sometimes. It's a difficult emotion.
Jenny, have you seen a couple of the comments that have come through regarding the comment that Deborah made?
Yes, I thank you for pointing me in the right direction. I have my chat up, but I wasn't looking at it. Yeah, it may present as shutting down or getting quiet for some people. Absolutely. Other people are definitely agreeing. So, yeah. I will tell you that sometimes I say things come out of my mouth that wouldn't normally in a calm situation come out of my mouth. Sometimes I say things that are hurtful because I'm not thinking in those anger moments. So, true confession time. And I feel real bad about them later, but not necessarily in the moment when I'm in the fight part of fight or flight. So, speaking of in the moment, so in those moments of intense feelings of anger, I'm going to let a couple of people in. In those moments, there are some things that we can do. So one thing that we can do is, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is just increasing that awareness and acknowledging our emotions. That can be hard in the moment, and it may be real fast in the moment. So when those emotions surge, and for me, I'm feeling that redness start creeping up my neck and into my face, and then my face gets heated. My heart rate might increase. Fists, I might make fists. I make it sound like I'm not a pretty calm person, but I'm a pretty calm person. But I have those moments because I'm human, right? When those happen, what I know is there are two things that put the brakes, the parasympathetic nervous system, into action. So can calm my nervous system in those moments. And that's breath and movement. So I know those to be true.
Take
So
a picture of that.
So breath is, I mean, it's slowing down our breath. It's when we actually stop and have some controlled breathing. So it's taking those slow, deep breaths. So is it okay to get a lot of angry? Yes, it is okay. As I said in the beginning, I think all emotions are innocent. We feel them all. So stopping and taking that deep breath, and in fact, I'm going to ask you all, and I doubt that you are in a moment of intense anger right now. I really hope that's not the case, but take a slow, deep breath and really take that moment and inhale and exhale. I find when I do that, my talking even slows down. So I might have done that for selfish reasons just now. If you inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth, it has extra activating powers for your parasympathetic nervous system, which is pretty nifty. So it actually activates your vagus nerve, which is the nerve that it actually runs all the way from your gut, all the way up into your brain. And it is the nerve that relaxes you. So you're activating your vagus nerve, which brings your brain back online. Counting to 10, I think counting to 10 is a great idea, only if you count slowly and intentionally and you are in the moment. I have a friend who, when she's really stressed, she will say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I just want to tell her to breathe. But telling someone to breathe in a moment of stress is not helpful. And they know that. It's like telling someone to calm down, right? We know that that doesn't really work. So if you do find counting helpful, then please count your breaths, count your inhales and your exhales and slow it down. And then movement. So Deborah talked about flight. She talked about stepping away. And it's okay to take a walk. It's okay to step away because movement will also bring your brain back online. You can also actually physically shake it off. I mean, I know there's the Taylor Swift song. I'm not talking, I mean, you can put on Taylor Swift if you would like, but shaking it off, actually, because we're moving, activates the parasympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system. So that's just another thing you can do. And the fun thing about shaking is you can actually do it and have other people not really see it. So, I mean, yeah, you can see my shoulders shaking a little bit right now, but I'm shaking my hands. And just that shaking can activate the brakes in your nervous system. Trying to fast forward here. Okay, there we go. Get to the next slide. So I think it's also important to think about locus of control. So what's in our control compared to what's in others' control. And I came across this meme of pandemic related, what's in our control and what's out of our control. We have to let go of the things that are outside of our control. We can't control whether or not others are following social distancing out in public or wearing their masks or getting their vaccines or not getting their vaccines. We can't control how long things will be the way they are. We can't control how others will react in situations, other people's motives, the amount of toilet paper, which about a year ago was something we all wished we could control. We can't control those things, but we can control our own attitudes. We can control our own responses. We really only have control over right here, us. That's it. So if we can own that and let go of the rest, that really helps in getting your brain back online too, and in that awareness of anger and what you can do about it. Thoughts, questions? Okay. Some additional strategies, and as I said earlier, I think Brene Brown just has a lot of wisdom to share, and in her research, she has found that we cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions. This was a big aha for me, because I think sometimes when we experience the uncomfortable emotions, we want to push them away. We want to avoid them. We want to not think about them. We want to suppress them. Whether that is doing things to numb those emotions, which could be alcohol, other drugs, food, or we're just purposefully putting them in the back of our mind. What happens, it's like a pot of water boiling on the stove, right? It continues boiling, even if it's on simmer, eventually that's gonna start to boil. And then you're gonna get a rolling boil. And then you get the lid on the top of the pan that's going like this. You can all hear that noise in your head, right? When it's doing this and it's bubbling and the water is sizzling on the stovetop. So that's what happens with our emotions too. They will come out. And so if we have some strategies that we engage in consistently to keep that water not boiling, to actually not numb those emotions, then we can actually engage in really truly feeling the positive emotions, have the experience with the uncomfortable or negative emotions, but really be able to shift that focus to the more positive ones. So some healthy routines, and these are probably healthy routines that you've heard about before, but they work with anger. It's amazing how healthy routines work across the board. So meditation and mindfulness activities are incredibly helpful. They really strengthen our ability to stay calm in stressful situations. So John Kabat-Zinn, who is an expert in mindfulness, the way he defines mindfulness is that it's paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. We're not, as humans, created to do this. If we get little teeny tiny moments of doing this, we're probably super fortunate. We're probably really ahead of the game. But the more we practice our mindfulness, the better we get at it. So a healthy diet. Debbie says she recently started meditation, and ask for some websites. Yeah, let me think about that. I'll see if I can think of some to share with you at the end. I've got a couple in mind. Actually, let me just give them to you right now, since they're in mind right now. The first one is called My Strength. My Strength is not just mindfulness. It's actually mental health and wellness across the board. And if you go to ecommunity.com, which at the end of the PowerPoint is part of my email, but ecommunity.com, or just Google Community Health Network Behavioral Health. You go to our main web page, you can get to My Success, and you can get to a free link to access My Strength, to access My Strength. And there are mindfulness activities there. And it's a great app, super helpful. So that's one that comes to me off the top of my head. Healthy diet. So I learned recently, so I knew that diet was important for us, but I just recently learned that 70% of our serotonin, and serotonin is the hormone that regulates mood, general well-being, feelings of happiness, 70% of the serotonin comes from your gut. So feeding yourself, and I see Katie nodding, feeding yourself healthy foods, having a healthy diet actually helps with anger because it increases that well-being. So it won't eliminate the emotion from our life because emotions are innocent, but it might minimize those intense reactions that we have. Exercise also is great for increasing um, our hormones related to well-being. So it also, exercise is wonderful because it puts us in the present moment. And we know that present moment, connect that to mindfulness, is super helpful. Time in nature. So nature actually activates our parasympathetic nervous system. Some people actually go out. I haven't tried this a whole lot, but they'll walk barefoot in their grass just to get truly grounded. I mean, that's the whole nother concept of grounding, right? Walking barefoot in the grass, but find that activates their parasympathetic nervous system, is actually truly calming to them. Also, journaling can be incredibly helpful. So, whether that's journaling about your emotions, so actually just putting your emotions in writing on paper, it's a way to get them out. But also, many people find gratitude journaling incredibly helpful. Shifting that frame of mind, focusing on gratitude helps you find more gratitude. And then Dr. James Gordon, who is the founder of the Center for Mind Body Medicine. So I had the opportunity to do some advanced training in mind body medicine. He will tell you that I think there were 4 people at the training from Lawrence Township schools. So one of them being Sean Bush, who will be doing a training on trauma in the coming months. So this is my spoiler alert. I would imagine that's going to be a very good training. So I encourage you to go. And I tried really hard not to give you much information that she will probably be sharing, but I couldn't help myself to actually bring this concept from Jim Gordon, from his book, The Transformation, or it's actually being renamed Transforming Trauma. He encourages us to make friends with our emotions. And he says the way that we do this is a threefold combination. It's kind of circular. So it starts with relaxation. All of the tips above in the PowerPoint are ways to kind of create that relaxed, present moment feeling. So that relaxation, and then being aware, just being able to identify and name our emotions and express them. So we could express them by talking with somebody. That's absolutely appropriate and may be really helpful, but not all times is that helpful. So it could be expressing them through writing, drawing, movement, song. There's so many different ways that we can express our emotions. So don't get stuck in a narrow lane of I have to speak my emotions, because that's not the only way to express them. And for some of us, expressing in writing or drawing or movement is actually a more effective way. You're the experts on yourselves, so choose the way that fits best for you. So I'm curious. So Debbie shared that she had recently started meditation. I'm curious, what healthy habits are you actually using or might you incorporate in the near future? It's mostly getting you thinking about potential changes in your life. What might you be willing to try? Or what might you have started that you find helpful? You can throw it in the chat or unmute yourself. Journaling, great. Yes, LaMonica.
Actually, my son and I work with the therapist, and she talked about the marinating and letting it marinate for like an hour or so. And then if we still are upset about it, come back and talk.
Love that concept. Great recommendation. It's kind of giving that time away. And Michael shared that he does journaling, which is great. I have done meditation off and on for probably most of my adult life, but I've become very intentional in the last several months with different forms of meditation. And when I do them consistently, I can tell a difference. I really do feel that change.
What kind work for you? What are you doing that you like the best?
So that is a great question. So honestly, again, spoiler alert, I would highly encourage you to go to Sean's training, because something called soft belly breathing is a form of concentrative meditation. And it's all just about just kind of being in the moment and breathing. And I have a feeling that she will share that technique. So I found that incredibly helpful. Also some physical meditation. So movement and shaking. I've been incorporating that, and that really is a way to kind of increase energy, but release some of that emotion. Great question.
I'll share as well. I thought that'd be great to let everyone know some things that work for me. Sometimes when I have high stressful emotions, I will just lay flat on the floor. Actually, it feels really good to feel my body connect with just that hard surface. Maybe some breathing as well, and you get to center. I get to center myself, and just be aware of my body, what I'm feeling, a fast heart rate, if I'm going to cry, you name it. And another thing I do is sometimes I take walks. And if I'm feeling anything that's like anxiety or anger, I don't care if I'm wearing jeans, I will start to run on my walk just to get that kind of that higher intense physical to just shake it out of the body. So it doesn't matter what I'm wearing, I'll run.
Yeah, that movement, right? We know that the body responds to that. So wonderful. And the mindfulness activity of laying on the ground, and just feeling that connection in that present moment. It's a great example. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? We've got one in the chat.
You want to see my
Yes. So this is your giant garnet.
Yeah.
And your students call it your stress rock. Tell us about it.
Well, there's a place on Pendleton Pike called Jock's Rocks. And I just went there on my prep period one day, and I was having a really hard day. And I just started picking up rocks. And I'm not one of those people with the triangle hat that believes in like the power of the pyramid or anything like that. But I just picked this rock up, and it just felt so good. And I just and it fits perfectly in my two hands like that. And so just to hold it and walk around with it, my kids will be like, "Oh, are you feeling stressed?" Or like, "What are you holding? Why are you holding that?" And the kids that have been in my class for a while, sometimes I'll be in like, "Are you feeling stressed?" And I'm like, "Not anymore, because I have my rock." And I don't know why it works, but it works. And if kids say, "Why are you holding it?" I'm like, "Well, here, hold it and see what you think." And they just say that it sort of feels like it just like sucks out any anxiety and just like makes you feel super grounded and really calm and peaceful. So this is the rock.
That's phenomenal.
And at Jock's Rocks, they sold this to me for like $25. And I was like, why? It's garnet. It's a solid garnet. And Jock's Rocks is on Post Road, like at 42nd and Post Road. It's like by the Dairy Queen. And they've been there forever. And anyway, they buy, like, when somebody, there's an auction, and then they know somebody was a stone collector, they'll just go buy the whole ship, everything they have. So anyway, sometimes I'll keep like a little stone in my pocket or something, like a worry stone. I used to do that, but this works every time. I never want it to leave my classroom because it's just so nice, because you never know like what's going to happen during the course of a day, something might stress me out, or I don't use it that often, but when I do, it's so nice to have it.
That is wonderful. And I can think of, I mean, I don't know for sure why it works, but I can think of lots of reasons. So that nature connection, the weight of it, that's fantastic. So Jocks Rocks, 42nd and Post by the Dairy Queen. Check it out. You can get a garnet for 20 bucks, 25 bucks, $25 well spent. So a few comments in the chat too. And Kate, thank you for sharing that. I think we're all we should probably give you some sort of like referral bonus so that you can get free rocks as we all go over there. So somebody,
another one. I just needed the one.
So you could have them in your car, you could have them in your purse, who knows? So Sheila said, I really love the physical ideas. They work for myself and my elementary kiddos. Absolutely. And then Michael, listening to the Bible on audio. Yeah. So prayer is a meditation, and lots of different religions have different forms of meditation. So listening to the Bible is definitely a mindful activity. Great example. And then Debbie has a smooth stone with a cross on it that she got from a weekend retreat. And she carries as an anchor and reminds her to stop, take a breath, and refocus. I love that. And then instrumental soft music. Fantastic. You all should trade places with me. These are great ideas. So we've talked about ourselves. What about others? So I love this quote, and as a youth clinical director, I do focus it working with kids. But when our little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm and not join in their chaos. And I love that. But you know what? I love it for all people, not just little people, because frankly, as a human, sometimes we are overwhelmed by big emotions, right? That's part of being a person. So dysregulation and co-regulation does not have any kind of age range to it, but certainly definitely works with kids. So dysregulation is basically just occurs when we have difficulty managing emotional responses. And I think we could probably all think of times that we have been dysregulated in our lives, whether through anger or another, just another intense emotion, another challenging emotion. You can actually be dysregulated from happiness and joy too. So it can be across the board, but usually dysregulation is more challenging when it's related to challenging emotions. And then co-regulation, which I think is just phenomenal. It's a supportive process to respond to individuals who are experiencing dysregulation. So it incorporates some key things, and it actually is an autonomic nervous system response. So our autonomic nervous system is responding to somebody else's and becoming co-regulated. So there's a physiological response that happens there, but it happens when someone else is experiencing dysregulation and we respond to them with warmth, empathy, calm and soothing tone of voice, facial expression. And these are the moments, I don't know about you, but I have experienced in my life times when I don't have the words to help someone fix something, probably because there are no words in that moment. And so silence and just holding space is hugely helpful. Just being present with someone, breathing with them. And Kate, you are absolutely correct. Dysregulated adults cannot help children regulate. We have to be in a regulated place in order to do co-regulation. And we have to be really intentional about it. So any other thoughts or questions on this? Co-regulation works at all ages. That's the beauty of co-regulation. And what we know is we have the keys. So when we feel ourselves becoming dysregulated in response to someone else, we know breath and movement. Two things, breath and movement. Shake it off. And that can bring us into a regulated place to do the co-regulation. So we spent about 45 minutes together this afternoon. And there's a 3-minute video I'd like to share that basically tells you what I just told you, but maybe not to the same depth, but has some great ideas for overcoming anger and just some helpful tips. So I'm going to share that. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. I should be sharing my screen correctly, but Katie, I'm going to rely on you. If you can't hear it, please unmute yourself and tell me. It would help if it started at the beginning of the video, so let me try that again. So great little reminders in there. What questions do you have for me, if any?
Just wanted to thank you again, Jenny. We really appreciate your time today. This was great.
Yeah, thank you. I do have a question for you all, and this isn't something you don't necessarily have to put it in the chat. You don't have to answer it out loud, but yeah, I can send a link to that video for sure. You don't have to answer it out loud, but I do encourage you to tell somebody, what are you going to do? Like, what did you get? What's the one thing that you're going to take from this training and do something with, whether that is a change in your daily practices, whether that's just remembering in the moment breath and movement. whether that is that reminder of co-regulation. What are you going to take and move forward with? And just my last slide is to thank you. Thank you for participating. Thank you for unmuting, for using the chat. I greatly appreciate that. But even more so, I just want to thank you for working in education in the past year, forever. But in this past year, the amount of dedication and love that I know educators and those who work in education have for the youth that you work with is amazing to me. And I know it's been a tough year, and I just thank you because what you do is so incredibly valuable and important. So thank you for joining, and I'll stick around in case you have any questions. Otherwise, have a wonderful evening. And Katie and Bridget, thank you so much for asking me to come and spend some time this afternoon.
Thank you, and you're very welcome.
Thank you.